Hi, welcome to the channel. This is another video on how to identify grammatical names and functions. It is actually the third video, the number 3 video on this topic. In this video, we shall be covering adverbial phrases and adverbial clauses. Because of the smaller size of fonts I am using in this video, I will suggest that you watch it in landscape and in its highest quality. I mean the highest video quality, so you can see all the notes and examples clearly. Because we are treating adverbial phrases and adverbial clauses, we have to know the meaning of the word adverbial. The word adverbial comes from adverb. Adverb is a part of speech, and it is a word that modifies a verb, an adjective, or an adverb. Basically speaking, adverbs describes verbs, adjectives, and co-adverbs. But we should acknowledge that adverbs describe more verbs than adjectives and adverbs. So we might want to focus a little bit more on verbs than the remaining two, part of speech that adverbs do modify. Now that we know what adverbs do, we can easily transfer this knowledge to adverbial phrases and adverbial clauses. Let us shift our attention to the left side of the screen and discuss adverbial phrases. An adverbial phrase is a group of words without a finite verb that functions as an adverb. That is, it modifies a verb, an adjective, and an adverb. In other words, an adverbial phrase describes a verb, an adjective, or an adverb. When we say that it modifies a verb, we mean that it describes the verb. Let's see the example below. The little boy carried the dishes with great care. The little boy carried the dishes with great care. With great care is underlined because it is an adverbial phrase. With great care is an adverbial phrase because it describes the verb carried. It tells us how the verb carried is done, is performed. It tells us how the little boy performed the action of carry in the sentence. Do not forget, from our definition, we said that an adverbial phrase modifies a verb, an adjective, or an adverb. In this example, it tells us how the verb was done. And it's a phrase because it does not contain a finite verb, not even any verb. Look at it. With great care. With is a preposition, great is an adjective, care is a noun. So there is no verb. There is no finite verb. So that is why we call it a phrase. Hence, the grammatical name is adverbial phrase, and the function is it modifies the verb carried. It modifies the verb carried because that is what it describes. Let's come to the right to discuss adverbial clause. An adverbial clause is a type of subordinate clause that functions as an adverb. This means that it modifies a verb, an adjective, or an adverb. Adverbial clauses are usually introduced with subordinate conjunctions depending on the type of that adverbial clause. Let's see the example below. He stood there as if he was frozen to the very spot. He stood there as if he was frozen to the very spot. As if he was frozen to the very spot is an adverbial clause because it describes how he stood. If you look at this clause very well, you will realize that it performs the same function as the phrase we first talked about, and that is because they are both adverbial, so they perform the same function. The difference is that the first one is a phrase while this one is a clause. How is this one a clause? This one contains a finite verb. As if he was frozen to the very spot. Was is a finite verb. In fact, it contains the subject and the predicate. He is the subject. Was frozen to the very spot is the predicate. So that is why this one is a clause. So we can say that the grammatical name is adverbial clause, and the grammatical function is that it modifies the verb stood because it tells us how the verb stood is done. How did he stand? He stood there as if he was frozen to the very spot. Let's go to the next screen for more examples. When it comes to adverbial phrases and adverbial clauses, we have different types. you will see that we have types of adverbial phrases and we have types of adverbial clauses. Now let's begin to look at each of them one after the other. A. Adverbial phrase of time. Adverbial phrase of time. And if you look at clause, we have adverbial clause of time. These two adverbials, adverbial phrase of time and adverbial clause of time, perform the same function. What do? They tell us the time that the verb is performed. They tell us the time that the verb in the main sentence, in the main clause, is performed. Let's begin with the phrase. The supervisor came during the holiday. The supervisor came during the holiday. During the holiday is underlined. Grammatical name, it is an adverbial phrase of time. The function is that it modifies the verb came. Came, it tells us when the verb came was done, when the verb came was performed. When did the supervisor come? You will say during the holiday. So it answers the question of when. It answers the question of when. It tells us the time. Example 2, Roman figure 2. She sweeps the classroom in the morning. She sweeps the classroom in the morning. In the morning is underlined. It is an adverbial phrase of time. That is the grammatical name. And the grammatical function, it tells us the time the verb sweeps is performed. When does she sweep the classroom? The answer is going to be in the morning. So in the morning answers the question of when. It tells us the time, the verb. So it modifies the verb. It tells us the time the verb sweep is performed. Let's come to the clause, adverbial clause of time. This clause tells us when the verb is performed. That's why we call it of time. It is usually introduced by words like when, whenever, while, till, till, until, as soon as, since, before, and maybe after. The first example there, it was raining when I woke up. It was raining when I woke up. When I woke up is a clause. It is not a phrase. It is a clause, adverbial clause. And how is it a clause? It contains the subject and predicate. I is the subject. Woke up is the predicate. And it contains a finite verb, woke, the past tense of wake. So it is a clause. Grammatical name, it is an adverbial clause of time. And what is the function? It modifies the verb phrase, was raining. Let's come to the second example under adverbial clause. Before our teacher came, we had swept the classroom. Before our teacher came, we had swept the classroom. Before our teacher came is underlined. It is an adverbial clause of time. Why is it a clause? It contains subject and predicate. Our teacher is the subject. Came is the predicate. And that came is the past tense of come. So it is a finite verb. That is why it is an adverbial clause. And the full name is adverbial clause of time. What is its function? It modifies the verb phrase had swept. It tells us the time we had swept the class. Let's come to adverbial phrase of place. Adverbial phrase of place. This type of adverbial phrase tells us the place, tells us where the verb is done, where the verb is performed. Example, let's see the first example. The boys slept in the parlor. The boys slept in the parlor. In the parlor is an adverbial phrase of place. That is the grammatical name. And the function, it modifies the verb slept because it tells us where the verb slept took place. It took place in the parlor. The second example there under adverbial phrase of place is down across the road, there is a woman who fries yam. Down across the road, there is a woman who fries yam. Down across the road is an adverbial phrase of place, and it modifies the verb to be, is. If they ask you, where is the woman who fries yam? You will say, down across the road. Coming back to clause, we have adverbial clause of place. Adverbial clauses of place are usually introduced by where and wherever. Those are the two common introductory items for adverbial clauses of place. The first example there says, I left the phone where you can easily find it. I left the phone where you can easily find it. Where you can easily find it is an adverbial clause of place. That is the grammatical name. It is a clause because it contains a finite verb, and that is a modal verb, can. Can is a modal verb. It is a finite verb. And of course, it contains a subject, you, and the predicate, can easily find it. So it is a clause, an adverbial clause of place. That is the grammatical name. The grammatical function is it modifies the verb left. The verb left. It tells us where the verb left is, where the verb left takes place. Where did I leave the phone? Where he can easily find it. Let's come to the second example below that. Wherever the old man goes, his grandson follows him. Wherever the old man goes, his grandson follows him. Wherever the old man goes is underlined. It is an adverbial clause of place, and it modifies the verb follows. It modifies the verb follows. We can reorder the sentence. We can say, the old man's grandson follows him wherever he goes. As used there, wherever the old man goes is an adverbial clause of place, and it modifies the verb follows. Let's move to the next screen where we talk about adverbials of manner. So we begin with phrase, adverbial phrase of manner. Adverbials of manner tells us how the verb is performed. That is, it answers the question of how. Under adverbial phrase of manner, we have the first example. Chukwu spoke in a very low voice. Chukwu spoke in a very low voice. In a very low voice is an adverbial phrase of manner. That is the grammatical name. And the function is that it modifies the verb spoke. The verb spoke. You would have noticed one thing. These adverbial phrases and clauses, they modify the verb that is outside of them. Whatever they want to modify is not within the adverbial phrase or the adverbial clause. It is always outside the adverbial phrase or the adverbial clause. In a very low voice, an adverbial phrase of manner, and it modifies the verb spoke. You will see that spoke is not part of the phrase. It is outside the phrase. That is what I'm trying to say. Quickly to the second example. She floated through the garden like a butterfly. She floated through the garden like a butterfly. Like a butterfly is underlined, and the grammatical name is adverbial phrase of manner. It tells us how she floated through the garden. So it is manner. The function is it modifies the verb floated because it describes the verb, so it modifies it. It modifies the verb floated. Let's come to adverbial clause. Adverbial clause of manner is mostly introduced by as, and sometimes like. Let's see the first example under adverbial clause of manner. He walked majestically as if he was a king. He walked majestically as if he was a king. As if he was a king is an adverbial clause of manner because it tells us how he walked. Do not forget, adverbials of manner tell us how something is done. So it tells us how he walked. Adverbial clause of manner. What is the function? It modifies the verb walked. It modifies the verb walked. The second example under adverbial clause of manner is the rain fell exactly as you have predicted. The rain fell exactly as you have predicted. As you have predicted is an adverbial clause of manner. And the function is that it modifies the verb fell. How did the rain fall? As you have predicted. And like I said, as you have predicted is the clause. It modifies the verb fell. You can see that the verb it is modifying is outside of the clause. It's not part of the clause. And it is a clause because it contains the subject, you, and the predicate, have predicted. And if you are wondering, is there a finite verb? Yes, have predicted is also the finite verb, the present perfect tense. Let's come back to phrase. We have adverbial phrase of frequency. Adverbial phrase of frequency. This adverbial phrase tells us how often or how rarely the verb is performed. The first example there says, the meeting holds twice in a month. The meeting holds twice in a month. Twice in a month is an adverbial phrase of frequency, and the function is that it modifies the verb holds. If we ask, how often does the meeting hold? We say twice in a month. The second example here is the boys run down the valley every day. The boys run down the valley every day. Every day is an adverbial phrase of frequency, and it modifies the verb run. How often do the boys run down the valley? We will say every day. So it modifies the verb run. Let's come back to adverbial clauses. Then in example D, we have adverbial clause of concession. Adverbial clause of concession. This adverbial clause of concession provides the opposite of what we have in the main sentence, of what we have in the main clause. It shows the opposite, and it is usually introduced by subordinate conjunctions such as although, though, unless. I think these are the major ones. Okay, and however. Let's see the example we have. Although we came early, she didn't attend to us. Although we came early, she didn't attend to us. Although we came early is an adverbial clause of concession, and it modifies the verb didn't attend. Didn't attend. One thing about adverbials is that they sometimes can be moved from one part of the sentence to another. Look at this particular sentence. Although we came early, she didn't attend to us. We can bring that clause to the end of the sentence. We can say, she didn't attend to us, although we came early. And adverbials, whenever they come at the beginning of a sentence, they are usually demarcated by a comma. They are usually separated by a comma whenever they come at the beginning of a sentence. That is why there is a comma here. Although we came early, she didn't attend to us. To the second example, Ali and Nkem never agree, even though they are friends. Ali and Nkem never agree, even though they are friends. Even though they are friends is an adverbial clause of concession, and it modifies the verb agree, or we can say never agree, as the case may be. It modifies the verb agree. The next type of adverbials that we have is adverbial phrase of purpose. Adverbial phrase of purpose. This particular adverbial phrase tells us the purpose of the verb. It is like adverbial clause of reason, but not really a clause. This one is a phrase, and in most cases, it shows purpose. The first example under this type of adverbial phrase is this one. We stood up to greet the principal. We stood up to greet the principal. To greet the principal is an adverbial phrase of purpose. This is a phrase because although it contains a verb, it is a non-finite verb. To greet. To greet is a non-finite verb, so it is still a phrase. It still falls under the category of a phrase. It's an adverbial phrase of purpose because it tells us the purpose of the verb stood. It tells us the reason we stood up. So it is an adverbial phrase of purpose, and the function is that it modifies the verb stood. It modifies the verb stood. The second example there is she worked really hard in order to succeed. She worked really hard in order to succeed. In order to succeed is also an adverbial phrase of purpose, and it modifies the verb worked. The verb worked. It tells us the reason or the purpose of the verb worked. And what's that reason? In order to succeed. Alright, let's come to the right side of the screen to talk about the remaining types of adverbial clauses. This one is adverbial clause of reason. Adverbial clause of reason. It tells us the reason for the action, the reason for the verb. It's usually introduced by subordinate conjunctions like because, since, as, for, in as much as, for as much as, etc. It answers the question of why the verb is performed, why the verb is done. Let's see some examples in sentences. The first example says, since the rain has stopped, we do not need an umbrella. Since the rain has stopped, we do not need an umbrella. Since the rain has stopped, as used in this sentence, is an adverbial clause of reason. That is the grammatical name. We must bear it in mind that we also use since to express adverbial clause of time. But in this case, it is more of reason than time. It is telling us why they do not need an umbrella. So it answers the question of why. Therefore, it is an adverbial clause of reason. And it modifies the verb phrase, do not need. It is telling us why they do not need an umbrella. The second example here says, he stole the money because he had no food. He stole the money because he had no food. Because he had no food is an adverbial clause of reason. And it modifies the verb stole because it tells us why the verb stole was performed. The next type of adverbial clause is adverbial clause of effect or result. This is like the reverse form of the adverbial clause of reason. Adverbial clause of effect or result. It tells us the result, the consequence of something. Let's see, the consequence of the verb that is performed. She was so hungry that she finished a bowl of rice. She was so hungry that she finished a bowl of rice. That she finished a bowl of rice is an adverbial clause of effect or result. It tells us the effect, the consequence of being so hungry. So, what is the function? It modifies the adjective hungry. The second example here says, the officer behaved irresponsibly such that he was immediately dismissed. The officer behaved irresponsibly such that he was immediately dismissed. Such that he was immediately dismissed is an adverbial clause of effect because it shows the consequence of behaving irresponsibly. And what is the function? It modifies the adverb irresponsibly. It modifies the adverb irresponsibly. Let's move to the next screen to discuss the last type of adverbial clause that we have in this video, and that is adverbial clause of condition. Adverbial clause of condition. It states the action that must be completed before the action in the main sentence can be achieved. This particular clause tells us what must be done in order for the verb in the main clause to be carried out. And it is usually introduced by subordinating conjunctions such as if, unless. Sometimes until can also be used. Until can be used for time, for adverbial clause of time, and sometimes for condition. So these are the subordinating conjunctions that are used to introduce adverbial clauses of condition. Example 1 says, Stella won't do it unless you plead with her. Stella won't do it unless you plead with her. Unless you plead with her is an adverbial clause of condition, and it tells us that this person must plead with Stella before she does whatever she wants her to do. Grammatical function, it modifies the verb phrase won't do. It modifies the verb phrase won't do. The second and the last example here says, if your score measures up, you will be admitted. If your score measures up, you will be admitted. If your score measures up is an adverbial clause of condition. It states what must be done before the verb in the main clause is achieved. The grammatical function, it modifies the verb phrase will be admitted. It means if the person's score does not measure up, the person will not be admitted. So we call it adverbial clause of condition. This video is becoming too long, but we have to look at few WAEC practice questions before we call it a day. Let's see some typical WAEC questions. So I have 6 questions in total. I'm going to display the questions. You just pause the video so you can write the question down or even find answers to them. You may write your answers in the comment section. So after you've seen the 6 questions, I will now come back to give you the answers. So here are the questions. Pause the video so that you can buy yourself enough time to answer the question. These ones are question 1 and 2. Alright, I'm going to go to the next screen for questions 3 and 4. These are questions 3 and 4. Pause the video so you can have enough time to answer the questions. Okay, let's go to questions 5 and 6. Here are they. Pause the video so you can buy yourself enough time to answer the questions. Alright, let's now find answer to the question before we call it a day in this video. Welcome back. Let's answer these questions and give some explanations. For question 1, indeed, before the second term holidays, we had a classroom where students would come in and go on recess as they finish their class assignment. Before the second term holidays is underlined, and we ask for the grammatical name and the grammatical function. Before the second term holidays. This is an adverbial phrase of time. It is a phrase because it does not contain a finite verb. It does not even contain any verb. It does not contain a subject and its predicate. So it is a phrase. It modifies the verb had. We had a classroom. If you ask, when did they have the classroom? You will say before the second term holidays. So adverbial phrase of time, that is the name. It modifies the verb had, that is the grammatical function. Let's come to number 2. Many students answer that name only because they put on school uniforms and leave home like others every school day. Only because they put on school uniforms and leave home like others every school day is underlined. And what is the grammatical name? It is an adverbial clause of reason. And the function is that it modifies the verb answer. It modifies the verb answer. It tells us the reason why many schoolgoers are called students. I know we might be wondering that this particular clause does not begin with because. It begins with only, then followed by because. Yes, don't be fooled by the only. In fact, that only can be removed from the sentence. The sentence is still very complete. So it is still an adverbial clause of reason. Sometimes the group of words given to you could pose a little challenge. You might be able to know that this group of words is an adverbial clause, or you even know that it is an adverbial phrase, but you do not know the type of adverbial clause or the type of adverbial phrase it is. You know that, oh, this is an adverbial phrase, but you do not know whether it is an adverbial phrase of time or an adverbial phrase of manner. You do not know. If you are in this problem, just write adverbial phrase and stop there. If you are not sure of the type, do not write the type. Just write only adverbial phrase and stop. And if it is an adverbial clause, you do not know whether it's an adverbial clause of reason or time or purpose, just write adverbial clause and stop. Once you are not sure of the type, write only the adverbial clause and move on. Let's demonstrate this in question 3. In addition, the antioxidants found in fruits are essential for combating stress and reducing the risk of chronic disease. For combating stress and reducing the risk of chronic diseases is underlined. Looking at this particular group of words very well, it is an adverbial phrase. This is because it does not contain a finite verb. Although it contains 2 verbs, but the 2 verbs, combating and reducing, are non-finite verbs. But then, I do not really know whether it is adverbial phrase of reason or purpose, the way it is in the sentence. I am sure that it is an adverbial phrase, but I do not know the type it is. So in this case, I will just write adverbial phrase and stop, since I am not sure of the type. Now let's look at the function. It modifies the adjective essential. In this case, this one does not modify a verb. Instead, it modifies an adjective. So if you look at it very well, the antioxidants found in fruit are essential for what? Say for combating stress and reducing the risk of chronic diseases. Number 4. To change direction, whales move their flippers similar to the way an aeroplane is steered. To change direction is underlined. What is the grammatical name? It is an adverbial phrase of purpose. And what is the function? It modifies the verb move. Why will the whales move their flippers? To change direction. Let's see the last 2 questions and call it a day. Number 5. And so for Andrew, since he finished his university education, it had been a success galore. Since he finished his university education is underlined. What is the grammatical name? It is an adverbial clause of time. It is a clause because we have the subject he and we have the predicate finished his university education. Then there is a finite verb finished, which is the past tense of finish. So it is a clause, an adverbial clause of time. What is the function? It modifies the verb phrase had been. Had been. Now to the last question. Suddenly, a middle-aged man broke loose from the crowd and ran as fast as his wobbly legs could permit. As fast as his wobbly legs could permit is underlined. What is the grammatical name? It is an adverbial clause of manner. It tells us how the man ran. Then what is the function? It modifies the verb ran. So this is all. It's been a long video, and if you have watched to this particular moment, I want to give you a thumbs up. Kindly drop your comment what you feel about this video in the comment section. Remember to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and recommend to others. Thank you for always being here. Until I come your way again, stay safe and be good.